Clara Whitmore dropped to her knees in the dirt, her worn carpetbag falling from her trembling fingers. 9 children stood before her on that broken porch. 9 pairs of eyes filled with hunger, grief, and something that looked terribly like hate. The oldest girl, barely 13, held a baby on her hip and a knife behind her back. Behind them, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in years watched Clara with dead eyes and said the words that would haunt her dreams. "You're the 4th one this year. The others ran. Will you?" This is the story of a girl who had nothing and became everything to a family that had lost hope. Stay with me until the end. I promise you won't regret it. Hit that subscribe button and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The train screamed to a halt, and Clara Whitmore pressed her palm against the filthy window, watching her breath fog the glass. Montana Territory stretched before her like a threat. Endless brown grass mountains that looked like broken teeth against a sky too big to be real. 21 years old. 4 households in 9 years. And now this, a telegram. A stranger and a one-way ticket to nowhere. "End of the line, miss." The conductor didn't look at her. Nobody ever looked at her for long. Clara stood her legs stiff from 3 days of travel and smoothed down the gray dress her cousin had thrown at her last month. "I won't be needing this anymore," Eleanor had said, already turning away. "I've married up." The dress was too big in the shoulders, too short at the hem. But it was better than nothing, and Clara had learned young that better than nothing was usually the best she could expect. She grabbed her carpetbag, one change of clothes, a hairbrush missing half its bristles, her grandmother's rosary, and a tin containing her mother's wedding ring. Everything she owned in the world fit in a bag small enough to carry with one hand. The platform was just wooden planks laid across packed dirt. No station house, no shelter, just wind and dust and the smell of cattle from somewhere she couldn't see. "You, Clara Whitmore?" She turned. The man standing 10 feet away looked like the land had been trying to kill him for years and hadn't quite succeeded. Tall, she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Dark hair shot through with gray, though he couldn't have been older than 40. A scar ran across his left cheek, white against sun-darkened skin. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Dark brown, nearly black, and completely empty. Like someone had reached inside him and scooped out everything that made a person human. "Yes, sir. Are you Mr. Brooks?" "Sam." He looked her over the way you'd assess a horse you were thinking of buying but probably wouldn't. "You're younger than I expected." "I'm 21. "I know how old you are. I read your aunt's telegram." He turned and started walking toward a wagon without waiting to see if she'd follow. "Said you were hardworking and wouldn't complain. Said you needed a position and weren't particular about conditions." Clara grabbed her bag and hurried after him, her worn boots kicking up dust. "That's all true." "We'll see." The wagon was old, the wood bleached gray by sun and weather. 2 horses stood in traces, their heads hanging low. Sam climbed up onto the driver's seat with the ease of a man who'd done it 10,000 times. Clara stood beside the wagon looking for a step. "Left side," Sam said without looking at her. "And hurry up, I've got work waiting." She found the wooden block and hauled herself up her skirts, catching on a protruding nail. The seat was sun-hot through her dress, but she didn't complain. She'd learned that lesson early, too. Sam clicked to the horses, and the wagon lurched forward. The train was already pulling away, the whistle fading into the distance, and Clara watched it go without letting herself feel anything at all. "How far is your ranch?" 3 hours, maybe more if the creek's up." 3 hours. Alone with a stranger who looked at her like she was already a disappointment. Clara folded her hands in her lap and stared straight ahead. The silence stretched for nearly an hour before Sam spoke again. "You know anything about children? I've helped raise cousins in every house I've lived in." "How many houses?" Clara's jaw tightened. 4, since my grandmother died." "And they all sent you away?" It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "They had their own children to worry about. I was..." Extra. Sam made a sound that might have been a laugh if there'd been any humor in it. Well, Miss Whitmore, I've got 9 children who are nobody's extra. Their mama died 18 months ago, and they've been through 4 women since then. None of them lasted more than a month. 9 children. The telegram had said 5. Clara turned to stare at him. 9 twins run in my wife's family. For a moment, something flickered in those dead eyes, pain maybe, or just exhaustion too deep to measure. Sarah, she's 13. Then the twins Matthew and Mark, they're 11. Ruth is 9. Esther's 7. Thomas is 5. The little twins James and John just turned 3. And baby Elizabeth. How old is the baby? 18 months. Sam's hands tightened on the reins. Born the day her mama died. Clara's throat closed. 18 months, the same amount of time Elizabeth's mother had been gone. That baby had never known her mother's face, her mother's voice, her mother's arms. And she was named after the woman she'd never meet. I'm sorry, Clara said quietly. That's a heavy burden. It's not a burden. They're my children. His voice went hard. And I need you to understand something before we get there. I'm not looking for a wife. I'm not looking for someone to replace their mother. I'm looking for a woman who can cook clean 10 children and keep her mouth shut about things that aren't her concern. Can you do that? Yes, sir. It's Sam. Yes, Sam. He grunted and fell silent again. The landscape rolled past brown grass, giving way to foothills, the mountains growing larger as they traveled. Clara saw cattle grazing in distant hollows, saw fence lines stretching to the horizon, saw exactly one other human being, a man on horseback who raised his hand to Sam and got a nod in return. Who was that? Jake Whelan. He works for me, lives in the bunkhouse. Is he good with children? Sam's mouth twisted. He's good with cattle. The children are scared of him. He's big and rough and doesn't know how to talk soft. But he's loyal and he works hard, and right now that's all I can afford to care about. Clara filed the information away. The wagon crested a rise, and Clara saw the ranch spread out below a 2-story white house, badly needing paint. A large red barn with a patched roof, outbuildings scattered across the property. A creek ran through the valley, catching sunlight. Mountains rose behind everything like a painted backdrop. It was beautiful. It was also clearly struggling. The fences needed mending. The garden beside the house had gone to weeds. Even from here, Clara could see the signs of a place that had lost its heart and was slowly dying of grief. Shadow Creek, Sam said. 1,200 acres. Been in my family 15 years now. Built the house myself when Sarah and I married. It's beautiful. It's falling apart. He started the horses down the slope. I spend every hour I've got trying to keep the cattle alive and the roof from caving in. The house hasn't had a woman's hand since Elizabeth died. The children do what they can, but Sarah's 13 and shouldn't be raising 8 younger siblings while I'm out with the herd. I understand. Do you... Sam pulled the wagon to a halt in the yard, but he didn't move to get down. Instead, he turned to look at Clara directly for the first time since they'd left the station. I've had 4 women come out here. First one lasted 3 weeks, said the work was too hard and the children were monsters. Second one made it 2 weeks before she caught a ride back to town with a supply wagon. Third one... His jaw tightened. Third one tried to discipline Thomas with a belt. I put her on the next train myself. Clara's hands curled into fists. If you think I would ever... Fourth one seemed perfect. Kind patient, good with the little ones. Stayed almost a month. Sam's voice dropped. Then she ran off in the middle of the night with $40 from my strongbox and the pocket watch my father gave me on his deathbed. I'm not a thief, a pooey. They all say that. Sam climbed down from the wagon. Here's what I know, Miss Whitmore. You came out here because you had nowhere else to go. Your aunt made that clear in her telegram. You're desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. Clara climbed down after him, her bag clutched against her chest. You're right. I am desperate. I've been passed from house to house like a piece of furniture nobody wants, but can't quite throw away. I've been fed scraps, and given the worst room, and worked until my hands bled, and through all of it, I smiled and said thank you, because what else could I do? She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the individual threads of gray in his hair. But here's what you don't know about me, Sam Brooks. I don't steal, I don't lie, and I don't run. Because I've spent my whole life running from places that didn't want me, and I'm tired. I'm so tired of being unwanted. So whatever test you're going to put me through, whatever trials your children have planned, whatever this land is going to throw at me, I'll take it. Because the only thing worse than staying is going back to nothing. Sam stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but maybe the first crack in that wall of exhaustion and distrust. Fair enough, he said finally. Let's see if you can survive the children. The front door opened. Clara turned and her heart stopped. 9 children stood on the porch arranged like a small army preparing for battle. At the front, a girl who could only be Sarah, 13 years old, with her father's dark hair and eyes holding a baby on her hip. Her face was closed, suspicious, and one hand was hidden behind her back. Behind her, 2 identical boys around 11 watched Clara with identical expressions of hostile curiosity. A younger girl, maybe 9, had positioned herself at Sarah's elbow like a lieutenant. Another girl, 7 or so, had her fingers in her mouth and her eyes fixed on the ground. A small boy of about 5 had his arms crossed and his chin jutting forward in challenge. And in the back, 2 toddlers clung to the porch railing, their faces smeared with what looked like jam, watching the scene with the innocent fascination of children too young to understand what was happening. The baby in Sarah's arms was awake, staring at Clara with huge blue eyes. Clara set down her carpetbag. "You must be Sarah," she said, keeping her voice calm and even. "I'm Clara Whitmore." "We know who you are." Sarah's voice was cold. "You're the new one. The one who's going to stay a few weeks and then leave like all the others." "Sarah." Sam's voice held warning. "It's all right," Clara said. She looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and saw what lay beneath the hostility. Exhaustion carved into features too young to carry such weight. Hands red and chapped from work they shouldn't have to do. Eyes that had seen too much loss and learned to expect more. "You're right to be suspicious," Clara told her. "You've been hurt before. You've had women come into your home and make promises they didn't keep. Why should I be any different?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't. Then I won't make promises." Clara took a step forward, then another until she was at the base of the porch steps. "I won't tell you I'm going to stay forever. I won't tell you I'm going to love you, or that everything will be all right, because you wouldn't believe me and you'd be smart not to." The twins exchanged glances. The little boy's arms uncrossed slightly. "What I will tell you," Clara continued, "is this. I have nowhere to go. No family who wants me. No home waiting somewhere else. Your father is giving me a chance when no one else would. So I'm going to work harder than anyone you've ever seen, and I'm going to get up every morning and do whatever needs doing, and I'm going to be here tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. Not because I promised, but because I have no other choice." She looked at each child in turn, even the toddlers, even the baby. "You can hate me if you want. You can test me and push me and try to make me leave, but I'm going to keep showing up. That's all I can offer you. Not love, you don't know me well enough for that, and I don't know you. Just presence, consistency. Someone who'll be here when you wake up." Silence fell over the yard. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then baby Elizabeth reached out from Sarah's arms, her small hand stretching toward Clara, fingers opening and closing. "Lizzie, no." Sarah started, but the baby was already leaning her whole body, straining toward Clara with the desperate intensity of a child who needed something she couldn't name. Clara looked at Sam. He nodded once, his expression unreadable. She climbed the porch steps and reached for the baby, and Elizabeth came to her willingly, more than willingly, with a sigh of relief that seemed impossible for someone so young. The child settled against Clara's shoulder, her thumb finding her mouth, her eyes drifting closed. "She doesn't go to strangers." Sarah's voice had changed, no longer cold, but cracked with something that sounded like hope fighting against experience. "She never not since Mama." Clara felt the baby's weight solid and warm and alive. Felt the trust in that small body given freely when it had no reason to be. "Well," she said softly, "maybe she knows something you don't." The 5-year-old Thomas Clara remembered stepped forward. His face was still set in defiance, but his eyes were wet. "You're not our mama," he said fiercely. "No," Clara agreed. "I'm not, and I never will be." "Then why are you here?" Clara looked at this small angry boy, and she saw herself at his age. She saw the fear beneath the fury, the desperation beneath the defiance. "Because," she said, "sometimes the people who are supposed to stay don't. And sometimes the people who aren't supposed to matter end up being the ones who do." Thomas stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and ran into the house, his footsteps pounding up the stairs. "He'll come around." Sam had climbed the porch behind her. "He's been angry since Elizabeth died. Doesn't know what to do with all that feeling." "I understand." Clara shifted the baby in her arms. "I was angry too once, when my parents died, then my grandmother, then everyone else who was supposed to love me." "What happened to the anger?" Clara looked at him, this broken man with his dead eyes and his 9 grieving children and his ranch that was slowly falling apart. "It's still there," she said. "I just learned to use it." Sarah was still watching her, that knife-sharp suspicion still in her eyes. But beneath it, Clara could see something else now, a desperate, dangerous hope. "Supper's in an hour," Sarah said finally. "I was making beans. There's cornbread if the flour hasn't gone weevily." "Show me the kitchen," Clara said. "I'll help." For a moment she thought Sarah would refuse. Then the girl nodded once and turned toward the door. Clara followed, still carrying Elizabeth, leaving Sam standing on the porch with his remaining children clustered around him. She heard the twins whispering to each other. Heard the little girl Esther, the 7-year-old, ask if the new lady was going to stay. She didn't hear Sam's answer. The kitchen was chaos, dishes piled in the wash basin, flour spilled across the counter, the remnants of failed meals scattered on every surface. The stove was putting out heat, but also a concerning amount of smoke from a crack in the flue. Sarah stood in the middle of it, her chin lifted in defiance. "I know it's a mess. I've been doing my best." "I can see that." Clara shifted Elizabeth to her hip. The baby was still asleep. Her fingers tangled in Clara's braid and surveyed the damage. "How long have you been running this household?" "Since Mama died. The women who came, they tried to help, but they didn't know where anything was, and they kept changing things, and then they left anyway, so—" Sarah's voice cracked. "So I just did it myself." "You've been the mother of 8 children for 18 months. At 13 years old. Somebody had to do it." Clara moved to the wash basin and began stacking dishes with her free hand. "Yes, somebody did. And you did it, Sarah. You kept your family fed and your siblings alive, and this household running when everything was falling apart around you." Sarah's breath caught. "I didn't do it well enough. The house is a disaster. The little ones don't listen to me. Thomas hates everyone, and Papa's just drowning," Clara finished. "I know. I saw it the moment I met him." "You don't understand." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "He used to smile. He used to laugh and play with us and tell stories at bedtime. He used to love us. And now he just works and doesn't even see us anymore, and I don't know how to bring him back." Clara set down the dishes and crossed to where Sarah stood. Elizabeth stirred on her shoulder but didn't wake. "Listen to me," Clara said quietly. "Your father loves you. He loves all of you so much that he can't even look at you without thinking of your mother. He's not ignoring you because he doesn't care. He's avoiding you because caring hurts too much right now. That's not fair to us. No, it's not. But grief doesn't care about fair. Clara put her free hand on Sarah's shoulder. Here's what I need you to understand. From this moment on, you are not the woman of this house. You're a 13-year-old girl and you're going to be allowed to be one. Do you understand? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. But someone has to. I will. I'll cook and clean and manage this household. You'll help me, yes, because you know things I don't, and because children should learn to work. But the responsibility isn't yours anymore. Clara squeezed her shoulder. You've carried it long enough, Sarah. Let it go. What if you leave too? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, today, I'm here. And today is all any of us can handle. Sarah stared at her for a long moment. Then, without warning, she burst into tears, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Clara pulled her close with one arm, holding the baby with the other, and let her cry. That was how Sam found them 10 minutes later. His oldest daughter sobbing against a stranger's shoulder, his youngest sleeping peacefully in that same stranger's arms. He stood in the doorway watching, and Clara saw something shift in his dead eyes. Not warmth. Not yet. But maybe the first flicker of something that had been missing for 18 months. Hope. Sarah's tears soaked through Clara's dress, but she didn't move. She held the girl and the baby and let the kitchen fade into background noise. When Sarah finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and swollen, but something in her eyes had changed. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I never. Don't apologize for feeling. Sarah wiped her face with her apron. The beans. They're going to burn. Clara released her and moved to the stove, shifting Elizabeth to her other hip. The baby stirred, yawned, and went back to sleep. The beans were fine, not burned, just needed stirring. Where's the cornmeal? Clara asked. We ran out 3 days ago. Flour. Some, maybe 10 pounds. Clara nodded. Then we'll make biscuits instead. Show me where things are. They worked together as the sun began its descent. Sarah showed Clara the kitchen's quirks, the stove that ran hot on the right side, the pump that stuck the pantry that was more empty than full. Clara listened and learned and filed everything away. The other children drifted in one by one, drawn by the smell of cooking. The twins Matthew and Mark positioned themselves in the doorway, watching Clara with identical expressions of wary curiosity. You two, Clara said without turning around. Wash your hands and set the table. They exchanged glances. We don't take orders from. It wasn't an order. It was an opportunity to eat dinner with clean hands, instead of standing in that doorway until the food gets cold. Clara still didn't look at them. Your choice. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps moving toward the wash basin. Ruth, the 9-year-old, appeared next. She was quieter than her siblings, watchful in a way that reminded Clara of herself at that age. Can I help? Ruth's voice was barely audible. Do you know how to make biscuits? Ruth shook her head. Then come here, and I'll show you. The girl moved to Clara's side like a shadow attaching itself to a new source. Clara handed her a bowl and showed her how to cut the lard into the flour, how to add just enough buttermilk, how to knead the dough without overworking it. Ruth followed every instruction with desperate concentration, as if learning this skill might somehow protect her from losing another person. Good, Clara said when the biscuits were shaped and ready for the oven. You're a quick learner. Ruth's whole face lit up. It was the first smile Clara had seen from any of the children. Esther, Sarah called toward the stairs. Bring the little ones down. Supper's almost ready. The 7-year-old appeared with James and John, the 3-year-old twins, holding each of her hands. They were still sticky with jam, their hair uncombed, their clothes stained. But they were walking and talking and alive, and Clara had learned not to expect more than that. Who are you? One of the twins asked, pointing at Clara. I'm Clara. I'm going to be helping your family for a while. Are you our new mama?" The kitchen went silent. Every child froze. Even baby Elizabeth stirred in Clara's arms as if sensing the sudden tension. "No, sweetheart. I'm not your mama. Your mama is in heaven." Clara knelt down to the twins' level, still holding Elizabeth. "But I'm going to be here to help take care of you. Is that all right?" The twin considered this with the serious deliberation of a 3-year-old. "Can you make cookies?" "I can." "Then it's all right." The tension broke. Matthew and Mark snorted with laughter. Ruth covered her mouth to hide a smile. Even Sarah's lips twitched. "James has priorities," Sarah said. "John's the same way. They think with their stomachs." "Most men do," Clara replied, and Sarah actually laughed, a short surprised sound, like she'd forgotten she knew how. Sam appeared in the doorway. He'd washed up. Clara could see the water still dripping from his hair and changed into a cleaner shirt. His eyes swept the kitchen, taking in the set table, the bubbling beans, the biscuits browning in the oven, the children gathered and almost peaceful. "Smells good," he said. "It's beans and biscuits. Nothing fancy." "Fancy left this house 18 months ago." He moved to his chair at the head of the table. "Sit down, everyone." The children scrambled into their places with the efficiency of long practice. Clara found herself directed to a seat beside Elizabeth's high chair across from Sarah. She settled the baby into the chair and tied a cloth around her neck. "Should I?" Clara started. "I'll feed her." Sarah reached for the bowl of mashed beans she'd prepared. "She's used to me." Clara nodded and sat back. Grace was said brief and rote, Sam's voice flat as he recited words he'd probably spoken 10,000 times. Then the food was passed, and the eating began, and for a few minutes there was only the sound of spoons against bowls and the occasional grunt of satisfaction. "It's good," Matthew said suddenly. Or maybe it was Mark. Clara couldn't tell them apart yet. "It's beans," his twin replied. "Same as always." "No, it's different. Better somehow." Clara didn't say anything, but she saw Sarah glance at her with something like grudging respect. Thomas was conspicuously absent. His chair sat empty at the far end of the table, a reminder of the battle not yet won. "Should someone get him?" Clara asked quietly. "He'll come down when he's hungry," Sam said. "He does this. Punishes everyone by punishing himself." "That's not punishment. That's pain." Sam's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He looked at Clara with something new in his expression, not warmth exactly, but attention. Real attention for the first time since she'd arrived. "You seem to know a lot about angry children." "I was one." She didn't elaborate, and Sam didn't push. But the silence that fell wasn't hostile anymore. It was thoughtful. After dinner, Clara insisted on cleaning up while Sarah tended to the younger children. The girl protested, but weakly she was exhausted, and the relief of having help, real help, was written all over her face. "Just this once," Sarah said. "Just this once." Clara agreed, knowing they both understood it was a lie. She washed dishes in water heated on the stove, her hands moving through motions so familiar they required no thought. The kitchen grew quiet as the children were herded upstairs. She heard Sam's heavy footsteps on the porch, then the creak of his chair as he settled in to watch the darkness fall. A sound from the doorway made her turn. Thomas stood there, his small face defiant, but his eyes wet. He was still in the same clothes from earlier, wrinkled now from whatever he'd been doing in his room. "I'm hungry," he said. "There's beans and biscuits. Sit down and I'll fix you a plate." "I don't want you to fix me a plate. I want Sarah." "Sarah's putting the little ones to bed. She's tired, Thomas. She's been taking care of everyone for a long time." "That's her job." Clara set down the dish she was washing and dried her hands on her apron. Then she crossed to the stove and began filling a plate. "It shouldn't be," she said quietly. "She's 13. Her job should be learning and playing and figuring out who she wants to become, not raising 8 children. She doesn't mind." "Yes, she does." Clara set the plate on the table and pulled out a chair. She minds very much. She's just too good and too tired and too scared to say so. Thomas stared at the plate, then at Clara, then back at the plate. His lower lip trembled. I heard her crying today, in the kitchen, with you. I know. She never cries. Not even when Mama... His voice broke. Not even then. She just took Elizabeth and started giving orders, and she never cried. Clara sat down across from him. Sometimes people hold in their tears for so long that they forget how to let them out. Then someone comes along and makes them feel safe enough to cry. She felt safe with you. I think so. I hope so. Thomas picked up his spoon, but he didn't eat. He just held it staring at the beans, like they might hold the answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. My mama used to sing to me, he said suddenly. Every night, even when I was too old for it, even when I told her to stop. What did she sing? Church songs mostly, and one about a river. His voice dropped to a whisper. I can't remember how it goes anymore. I try and try, but it's gone. Clara's heart cracked open. That's the hardest part, she said. Forgetting. Feeling like you're losing them all over again every time a memory fades. Thomas looked up at her, and for the first time his eyes held something other than anger. You lost someone too. My mother, my father, my grandmother. Clara folded her hands on the table. Everyone really. Everyone who was supposed to stay. Does it stop hurting? No. But you learn to carry it differently. The weight doesn't get lighter, you just get stronger. Thomas was silent for a long moment. Then he picked up his spoon and began to eat. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't acceptance. But it was a start. Clara went back to the dishes, and they shared the kitchen in silence, not comfortable exactly, but not hostile either. Just two broken people existing in the same space, both pretending they weren't watching the other. When Thomas finished, he brought his plate to the wash basin without being asked. Good night, he mumbled. Good night, Thomas. He paused at the doorway. My mama's name was Elizabeth. Everyone called her Beth. That's a beautiful name. Baby Elizabeth doesn't look like her. She looks like Papa's mother. Mama used to say it was God's little joke giving her a baby who looked like the mother-in-law she couldn't stand. Clara laughed before she could stop herself. Thomas's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. She was funny, he said. Mama, people don't remember that about her. They talk about how kind she was, how hard she worked. But she was funny too. Thank you for telling me that. Thomas nodded once and disappeared up the stairs. Clara listened to his footsteps, heard a door open and close, and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. 1 down. 8 to go. The next morning came too early. Clara woke before dawn, her body still running on the rhythms of other people's households. She dressed in the darkness and made her way downstairs to find Sam already gone, his coffee cup sitting empty in the wash basin. She built up the fire and started breakfast oatmeal with the last of the brown sugar more biscuits from last night's dough. The children appeared in stages, still drowsy, still wary, but more curious than hostile now. You're still here, Matthew said as he slid into his seat. I told you I would be. The last one said that too. She lasted a week. Then I suppose you'll just have to wait and see. He shrugged, but Clara caught him watching her as she moved around the kitchen. Looking for signs of weakness probably. Looking for the cracks that would eventually break her open. He wouldn't find any. Not because they weren't there, but because Clara had spent 21 years learning to hide them. After breakfast, Sarah tried to take Elizabeth and start on the household chores. Not today, Clara said. Today, you're going to show me where everything is, your mother's way of doing things, the schedule she kept, what works and what doesn't. Then tomorrow I take over. But the washing needs... It can wait one more day. This is more important. Sarah hesitated, clearly torn between relief and the fear of relinquishing control. I know it's hard, Clara said gently. Trusting someone new. But I can't do this job well without your help. I need you to teach me." The word teach did something to Sarah's expression. It shifted the power dynamic, made her the expert instead of the displaced child. "All right," she said slowly. "I'll show you." They spent the morning going through the house. Clara learned which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck, which doors needed to be shouldered open. She learned that Ruth had nightmares, and Esther wet the bed sometimes, and the twins couldn't be separated at night, or they both screamed. She learned that Thomas kept a box under his bed with things that had belonged to his mother: a handkerchief, a ribbon, a button from her Sunday dress. That Matthew was the leader, and Mark was the follower. But Mark was smarter in ways that didn't show. That Ruth was an observer, always watching, always cataloging, storing information, like a squirrel storing nuts for winter. And she learned about Elizabeth Beth through the things she'd left behind. "This was her room," Sarah said, pushing open the door to the master bedroom. "Papa sleeps here, but he hasn't moved anything. It's still all her things." The room was sparse, but feminine. A quilt on the bed that had clearly been made with love-dried flowers on the dresser, a sampler on the wall that read, "Home is where the heart rests." On the bedside table sat a wooden box carved with wildflowers. "Her memory box," Sarah whispered. She kept everything important in there. Recipes, household notes, letters from her family back east. "I haven't touched it since she died." Clara moved to the dresser, her fingers brushing the dried flowers. "Would it be all right if I looked, not to take anything, just to learn?" Sarah's face crumpled, then smoothed. She would have wanted that. She always said the things in that box were meant to help whoever came after her. She knew. She was sick for a long time before the twins were born. She knew every pregnancy might be her last. Sarah's voice steadied, taking on the matter-of-fact tone of someone who'd had to grow up too fast. When she realized she was carrying Elizabeth, she started writing everything down. Recipes, remedies, notes about each of us. Our fears, our favorites, our habits. She wanted whoever took care of us to know. Clara opened the box with reverent hands. Inside was exactly what Sarah had described. Pages of neat handwriting recipes with annotations, letters tied with ribbon, and at the very bottom, a collection of drawings and notes from the children. One drawing caught her eye, a family portrait clearly done by a young child with 9 stick figures and a sun in the corner. At the bottom, in a woman's handwriting, "Thomas, age 4, our family." "She saved everything?" Clara said softly. "She loved us." Sarah's voice cracked. "So much. And then she left." Clara turned to her. "She didn't leave, Sarah. She died. Those are very different things." "It feels the same." "I know it does. But your mother didn't choose to go. She fought to stay. I can see it in these notes, in everything she did to prepare. She wanted to be here with you. She just ran out of time." Sarah's tears came again, quieter, this time more resigned. "I'm going to read all of this," Clara said, "and I'm going to learn from it. Your mother built something beautiful here, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't exist. I'm going to honor it. The other women didn't. They tried to change everything. Rearrange the kitchen, throw away Mama's things, make us forget. That was wrong of them. You don't heal from loss by erasing it. You heal by learning to carry it." She put the box back on the dresser, but left it where Sarah could see it. A reminder that Beth's legacy wasn't going anywhere. They continued through the house, Sarah's teaching becoming more animated as she realized Clara was actually listening. By midday, Clara had a mental map of the household, its routines, its rhythms, its broken parts, and the ways Beth had held them together. "The garden," Sarah said as they stood on the back porch. "That was Mama's pride. She grew vegetables, herbs, flowers. It fed us through winter when money was tight." Clara looked at the overgrown plot weeds choking whatever had once grown there. "I tried," Sarah continued, "but I couldn't. I don't have her gift. Everything I planted died." "Then we'll learn together." I'm not a gardener either, but I can follow instructions. Clara nodded toward the memory box upstairs. I bet your mother wrote something down. For the first time, Sarah smiled. A real smile, not the tight protective expression she'd worn since Clara arrived. She wrote down everything. That afternoon, while the younger children napped and Sarah actually rested, for once Clara sat at the kitchen table and read through Beth's notes. The handwriting was clear and practical, the voice that emerged from the pages warm and wry and full of love. Thomas throws tantrums when he's overwhelmed. Don't punish, hold him tight until the storm passes. He needs to know he won't shake you loose. Ruth watches everything, but says nothing. She's taking it all in, processing. When she finally speaks, listen. She's probably right. Matthew leads, Mark follows, but Mark is the clever one. Don't underestimate him. Sarah tries too hard to be perfect. She thinks if she's good enough, nothing bad will happen. Someone needs to tell her that bad things happen regardless, and it's not her fault. Clara's eyes stung. This woman had known her children so completely, had loved them so fiercely, had done everything she could to prepare them for a world without her. And then she'd left anyway, not by choice, but by cruel circumstance, and her family had been falling apart ever since. The kitchen door opened, and Sam walked in, dustier than he'd been that morning, exhaustion carved even deeper into his features. You're reading Beth's notes. Clara looked up. Sarah showed me. I hope that's all right. He moved to the water pump and filled a cup, drinking it down in one long swallow. She wrote those for whoever came after her, said she knew she wasn't going to make it even before Elizabeth was born. Sarah told me. She was brave. She was stubborn. Sam refilled his cup. Kept insisting she'd be fine right up until she wasn't. Kept making plans for a future she knew she wouldn't see. That's not stubbornness, that's hope. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you've been here one day, Miss Whitmore. You've already got Sarah smiling and Thomas talking, and my children eating dinner together without fighting. How? I listened. That's simple. It's not simple at all. It's the hardest thing in the world, really listening to someone's pain without trying to fix it or dismiss it or make it about yourself. Most people can't do it. Sam set down his cup and looked at her. Really looked the way he hadn't since she arrived. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Another girl looking for an easy position, or a desperate woman who'd put up with anything just to have a roof over her head? I am desperate. I told you that. Desperate people don't usually make children feel safe. They're too wrapped up in their own survival. Clara closed Beth's notebook carefully. I spent 9 years feeling unsafe in other people's houses. I know what it does to a child. I wouldn't inflict that on anyone. Your aunt's telegram said you were difficult, hard to place. That's why she sent you so far. Clara's jaw tightened. My aunt thinks any woman who speaks her mind is difficult. I'm not easy, Mr. Brooks. I have opinions and I don't hide them, but I'm not unkind and I don't hurt children and I work hard. If that's not enough, it's enough. He said it quietly, but with a certainty that surprised them both. I'm not looking for easy. Easy doesn't survive out here. He turned and left the kitchen without another word. Clara watched him go, then looked down at Beth's notes still sitting on the table. Sam is good, the first page read. Better than he knows. When I'm gone, he'll blame himself. Don't let him. The love he carries will turn to guilt if no one helps him redirect it. He needs someone to fight for him the way he fights for everyone else. Clara closed her eyes and took a breath. She'd come here looking for a place to survive. But Beth had left instructions for something far more complicated, healing a family that had forgotten how to heal. The question was whether Clara was brave enough to try. That night, after the children were in bed, Clara found herself alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea she'd made from dried herbs in the pantry. Beth's recipe. Beth's garden dead now, but still providing. Footsteps on the stairs made her look up. It was Sarah, still dressed, her face pale in the lamplight. Elizabeth won't stop crying, she said. Nothing works. I've tried everything. Clara set down her cup. May I try? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. The nursery was small, just a crib and a rocking chair, and the soft glow of a night candle. Elizabeth was red-faced and screaming. Her tiny fists clenched her whole body, rigid with distress. Clara lifted her gently and settled into the rocking chair. The baby fought at first, arching her back, wailing louder. But Clara held firm, rocking steadily, humming something that wasn't quite a song, just tones rising and falling, a rhythm that came from somewhere she couldn't name. Slowly, Elizabeth's screams softened to whimpers. Her fists unclenched, her body relaxed against Clara's chest. "How did you do that?" Sarah whispered from the doorway. "I don't know. I just held on. She cries like that every night, has since Mama died. I sit with her for hours sometimes." Clara looked at Sarah, 13 years old, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders bent under a weight no child should carry. "Not anymore," Clara said. "From now on, I'll come when she cries. You need to sleep." "But sleep, Sarah. I've got her." Sarah stood in the doorway for a long moment, her face working through emotions too complex to name. Then, without a word, she turned and walked to her room. Clara stayed in the rocking chair all night, Elizabeth warm against her chest, humming songs she didn't remember learning. When dawn came, the baby was still sleeping peaceful for the first time in 18 months. And Clara knew with a certainty that settled into her bones that she'd found her place. Not because anyone had chosen her, not because she'd earned it, but because these children needed her and she needed to be needed, and sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. 3 weeks passed like water finding its path through stone. Clara learned the rhythms of Shadow Creek, the early mornings, the endless chores, the small victories that kept her going. Elizabeth slept through the night now. Thomas had stopped running from the table. Even the twins Matthew and Mark had begun treating her less like an intruder and more like a fixture. But it was Sarah's transformation that struck Clara most. The girl had stopped trying to manage everything. She laughed, sometimes actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected that the first time it happened, Sam nearly dropped his coffee cup. "What?" Sarah demanded, catching his stare. "Nothing," Sam said. But his eyes stayed on his daughter, and Clara saw something flicker in them. Something that had been dead for 18 months. That morning, Clara was kneading bread when she felt it, a change in the air, a pressure that made her ears pop. She looked toward the window and saw the sky had gone the color of a bruise. Sam burst through the kitchen door, his face grim. "Storm coming, big one. Get the children inside." Clara was already moving. "Sarah, Matthew, Mark." The children came running from various corners of the house and yard. Clara counted heads automatically. Sarah with Elizabeth, Ruth clutching her rag doll, Esther holding James and John's hands, Matthew and Mark tumbling through the door together. 8. She counted again. 8. "Where's Thomas?" Silence. "Thomas." Sam's voice cracked like thunder. "Thomas, get in here." "Nothing." Clara grabbed Sarah's arm. "Where does he go when he wants to be alone?" "The barn usually, or the creek, or—" Sarah's face went white. "The old oak tree. Past the north pasture. He climbs it when he's upset." "He was upset this morning. I yelled at him for tracking mud. I didn't mean I was just tired and—" Clara didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran for the door. "Clara." Sam caught her arm. "You can't go out there. That storm—" "He's 5 years old and he's alone." "I'll go." "The children need you here. They're terrified." Sam's grip tightened. His eyes bored into hers, and Clara saw the war raging behind them, the instinct to protect his son battling the knowledge that his other 8 children were watching, needing him to be steady. "If anything happens to you, then you'll find another housekeeper." Clara pulled free. "Keep them safe." She ran. The wind hit her the moment she cleared the porch, a wall of force that nearly knocked her sideways. She bent into it and kept moving, her skirts whipping around her legs, her eyes streaming from the dust that was already swirling through the air. The north pasture, past the fence line. She'd seen the old oak from a distance, but never walked to it. Thomas. The wind tore his name from her mouth and scattered it like leaves. Thomas. The sky was green now, that sickly color that meant the worst kind of storm. Clara had heard stories from other passengers on the train twisters that could lift a house hail, that could kill cattle winds, that stripped bark from trees. She reached the fence and climbed over her dress, catching on a nail tearing. She didn't stop. The oak came into view, massive, ancient, its branches thrashing in the wind like arms trying to ward off an attacker. And there near the top, a small figure clinging to a branch. Thomas. He saw her. His mouth opened, but the wind stole whatever he shouted back. Clara reached the base of the tree and looked up. 15 feet, maybe more. The branches were thick but wet with the first drops of rain, slick and treacherous. "Climb down!" she screamed. Thomas shook his head, his face white with terror. His arms were wrapped around the branch, his whole body rigid with fear. "I can't. I'm scared." Clara looked at the sky. The clouds were rotating now, a slow, terrible spiral that made her stomach clench. She started to climb. Her hands found purchase on the rough bark, her feet scrambling for footholds. She'd never climbed a tree in her life, had never had the chance passed from house to house where children were meant to be useful, not playful. But she climbed now. "Hold on, Thomas, I'm coming." The wind screamed. A branch snapped somewhere above her, crashing past close enough to brush her shoulder. Rain began to fall, in earnest, cold and sharp, making every handhold slippery. Clara's foot slipped. She grabbed wildly, caught a branch, hung for a terrible moment, with nothing but air beneath her. "Clara!" Thomas's voice raw with terror. She pulled herself up, found her footing again, kept climbing. 10 feet. 8. 5. She reached Thomas's branch and edged along it, her arms shaking with effort. The boy's face was streaked with tears and rain, his lips blue with cold. "I've got you," Clara said, and wrapped her arm around his waist. "I've got you, sweetheart. We're going down together. I can't let go. I can't." "You don't have to let go. Just hold on to me. I'll do the rest." Thomas transferred his death grip from the branch to Clara's neck. His weight nearly pulled them both off, but Clara locked her legs around the branch and held. Okay, we're going to move now. One branch at a time. Don't look down." They descended like that, inch by agonizing inch. The rain was torrential now, the wind a constant roar. Clara's arms screamed with exhaustion. Her hands bled from the bark. But she didn't let go. 5 feet from the ground, her foot slipped for the final time. She twisted as they fell, pulling Thomas to her chest, taking the impact on her back. The world went white with pain. Then Thomas was scrambling off her, pulling at her arm, screaming something she couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Clara forced herself to move, to stand, to grab Thomas's hand and run. The barn was closer than the house. She made for it, dragging the boy behind her, the wind fighting them every step. Something flew past her head, a piece of wood maybe, or a bucket, and she ducked, stumbled, kept running. The barn door was open, banging against the frame. Clara threw Thomas inside and dove after him, pulling the door closed and wedging a pitchfork through the handles. They huddled in the corner while the world tried to tear itself apart outside. "I'm sorry," Thomas sobbed against her chest. I'm sorry. Clara held him tight, ignoring the pain in her back, the blood on her hands. "It's okay. You're safe. We're safe. I thought I was gonna die. I thought—" His voice broke into fresh sobs. "I wanted my mama. I wanted her so bad, and she wasn't there, and I thought I was gonna die, and I'd never see her again." "Shh. I know, baby." "Why did you come?" Thomas pulled back to look at her, his face twisted with confusion. "The others wouldn't have. They would have let Papa come or just waited for the storm to pass. Why did you come for me? Clara smoothed the wet hair from his forehead. Because you matter, Thomas. Because you're precious and important. Because the thought of losing you was unbearable. But I've been mean to you. Yes, you have. And I said I hated you. You did. So why? Clara looked at this small, angry, grieving boy, and she saw herself. She saw every year she'd spent being unwanted, being tolerated, being passed along like something no one quite knew what to do with. Because someone should have come for me, she said quietly. When I was your age, when I was scared and alone and crying for my mother, someone should have climbed up and gotten me. And nobody ever did. So I'll be damned if I let that happen to you. Thomas stared at her. Then he threw his arms around her neck and held on like he'd never let go. They stayed like that while the storm raged outside. Clara felt every bruise forming, every cut stinging, every muscle trembling with exhaustion. But she also felt Thomas's heartbeat against her chest, steady and alive. She'd done it. She'd kept him safe. The storm passed after what felt like hours, but was probably only one. The wind died down. The rain softened, and eventually the terrible roaring faded into ordinary silence. Clara and Thomas emerged from the barn to find devastation. The chicken coop was gone, scattered across half the yard. Part of the barn roof had peeled away. A tree had fallen across the fence line, but the house was standing. And running toward them across the muddy yard was Sam, his face white with terror. Sarah and the other children clustered on the porch behind him. Clara, Thomas! He reached them and fell to his knees, pulling Thomas into his arms with a sound that might have been a sob. Papa. Don't ever do that again. Do you hear me? I'm sorry, Papa. I was scared, and I couldn't get down, and Clara came. She climbed all the way up and got me. Sam looked at Clara over his son's head. His eyes were wild, his face streaked with rain or tears, or both. You went into that storm. For him. He was alone. You could have died. But I didn't. Sam released Thomas and stood. He took one step toward Clara, then another. And then before she could react, he pulled her into his arms and held her. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't soft. It was the desperate embrace of a man who'd lost too much and couldn't bear to lose anything else. Thank you. He whispered into her hair. Thank you. Clara let herself be held. Let herself feel just for a moment what it was like to be valued, to be essential, to matter to someone. Then the children were swarming around them, Ruth crying, the twins talking over each other, Sarah trying to examine Clara's bleeding hands, James and John demanding to know if the chickens were dead, Esther clutching Thomas like she'd never let go. And Elizabeth in Sarah's arms reaching for Clara with that single-minded determination she'd shown from the very first day. Clara took her, held her close, and looked around at this family that wasn't hers by blood, but was becoming hers by choice. The chickens are probably fine, she said. Chickens are survivors. Matthew laughed, actually laughed, and the tension broke. They spent the rest of the day cleaning up. Sam and Jake worked on the barn roof, while Clara and Sarah salvaged what they could from the chicken coop. The children helped where they could and stayed out of the way where they couldn't. By evening, everyone was exhausted. Clara made a simple dinner soup from the root cellar vegetables that had survived bread from the morning that was only slightly stale, and the family ate in tired silence. Thomas sat beside Clara for the first time. He didn't say anything, but he stayed close, and when his hand found hers under the table, she held it. After the children were in bed, Clara found Sam on the porch, staring out at the storm-ravaged land. You should have those hands looked at, he said without turning. They'll heal. Clara. She moved to stand beside him. I've had worse. Believe me. He turned to look at her, then really look, and Clara saw something new in his expression. Something that made her pulse quicken and her stomach flutter. Beth would have liked you, he said quietly. She would have trusted you with our children. You can't know that. I can. She wrote about it in her notes. what kind of woman she hoped would come after her. Someone brave, she said. Someone who would fight for them. His voice roughened. She described you, Clara. Without ever meeting you, she described exactly who you are. Clara's throat tightened. Sam, I'm not asking for anything. He held up a hand. I know this is strange. I know you came here as hired help, not as anything else. But I need you to know. What you did today running into that storm for Thomas. I've never seen anyone do something like that. Not for someone else's child. He's not just someone else's child. Not anymore. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning, neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. Sam nodded slowly. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we've got a lot of rebuilding to do. Clara went inside, but she didn't sleep for a long time. She lay in her narrow bed, her bandaged hands throbbing, her back aching, and thought about what she'd almost lost today. Not her life, she'd risked that willingly, but this family, this place, this feeling of belonging that she'd never experienced before and couldn't bear to lose now. The next weeks passed in a blur of rebuilding. The community came together, neighbors Clara hadn't even known existed, appeared with tools and supplies, helping to repair the barn and reconstruct the chicken coop. Mrs. Henderson from 5 miles east brought fabric and thread, insisting that Clara needed new dresses after the storm had destroyed her spare one. You can't go around in rags, the older woman said firmly. What would people think? I don't much care what people think. Good. That'll serve you well out here. Mrs. Henderson smiled. Beth was the same way, stubborn as a mule and twice as determined. Clara looked up sharply. You knew her? Knew her well. She was my closest neighbor, which out here means something. We wrote letters back and forth all winter when the snow was too deep to visit. Mrs. Henderson's eyes softened. She talked about you, you know. That's impossible. She didn't know me. She knew someone would come, someone who would love her children and take care of her family. She prayed for that person every night. The older woman patted Clara's hand. I think her prayers were answered. Clara couldn't speak, could only nod and blink back the tears that threatened to fall. The children were different after the storm. The wariness that had defined them was fading, replaced by something warmer. Ruth followed Clara everywhere now, chattering about everything and nothing. The twins actually obeyed her instructions most of the time. Esther had started calling her Miss Clara with something like affection, and Thomas had transformed completely. The angry, hostile boy was still there sometimes, but underneath was someone sweet and desperately in need of love. He brought Clara presents, pretty rocks, interesting sticks, once a frog that made her shriek before she caught herself. You're not scared of frogs, are you? He asked, clearly hoping she was. Terrified, Clara said solemnly. But only the green ones. Thomas grinned and ran off to find more green frogs. But the peace couldn't last. Clara knew that. Happiness had always been temporary in her life, a brief rest stop on the road to the next disappointment. She just didn't expect the disappointment to arrive in the form of a black carriage on a sunny Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after her arrival at Shadow Creek. Clara was in the garden with Ruth and Sarah trying to salvage what remained of Beth's herbs when she heard the wheels. She stood shading her eyes against the sun and felt her stomach drop. The carriage was expensive polished black, with brass fittings pulled by matched horses that probably cost more than the entire Shadow Creek ranch. It didn't belong here. Nothing that fine belonged in this hard, rough country. And stepping out of it dressed in severe black silk despite the heat was a woman Clara recognized despite the years that had passed. Aunt Prudence. No, Clara whispered. What is it? Sarah asked, standing beside her. Who is that? Clara couldn't answer, could only watch as Prudence surveyed the ranch with an expression of barely concealed disgust, then turned and saw Clara standing in the ruined garden with dirt on her hands and patches on her dress. Clara. Prudence's voice carried across the yard, sharp and cold. I see you've managed to lower yourself even further than I imagined possible. Sam emerged from the barn, Jake behind him. His eyes went from the carriage to Prudence to Clara, and his expression hardened. "Can I help you, ma'am? You must be Mr. Brooks." Prudence didn't extend her hand. "I'm Prudence Whitmore Alcott, Clara's aunt. I've come to take her back to Boston." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. "No." It came out barely above a whisper. She tried again louder. "No, I'm not going anywhere." Prudence's eyebrows rose. "I don't believe I asked for your opinion. This arrangement was always temporary, a way to keep you occupied while I found something more suitable. I've secured you a position with the Harrington family in Boston. You'll be a nursemaid to their 3 children. Respectable work for a respectable family." "I have work. I have a family." "You have a position as hired help in the wilderness, caring for another woman's children." Prudence's lip curled. "That's not a family, Clara. That's servitude." Clara felt the children gathering behind her, felt Sarah's hand slip into hers, felt Thomas press against her side, felt Ruth's small arms wrap around her waist. "You're wrong," Clara said. "This is more family than you ever gave me." Prudence's eyes narrowed. "I gave you food and shelter and opportunities. You gave me scraps and leftovers, and the clear message that I was a burden to be endured." Clara's voice shook, but she didn't back down. "You shipped me out here because you wanted to be rid of me. You didn't expect me to find something worth staying for. This—" Prudence gestured at the ranch at the children at Sam standing silent and watchful by the barn. "This is what you're choosing, poverty and isolation, and someone else's broken family. This is what I'm choosing." Clara stepped forward, releasing the children's hands, standing alone to face the woman who'd made her feel worthless for so many years. "I spent 21 years believing I was disposable, that nobody would ever choose me, want me, fight for me. And then I came here. And these children—" her voice cracked. "These children needed me, not because I'm perfect or special or better than anyone else, just because I showed up, just because I stayed." "Clara." "I'm not finished." Clara's chin lifted. "You can go back to Boston and tell whoever you want, whatever you want. Tell them I'm ungrateful. Tell them I chose poverty over respectability. Tell them I'm not worthy of the Whitmore name. But I am not leaving this ranch. Not today. Not ever." Prudence stared at her, and for the first time in Clara's memory, she looked uncertain. "If you stay here, you are no longer my concern. No longer family. I'll wash my hands of you completely." "Then wash them." The words hung in the air between them. Prudence's face hardened into something like stone. "So be it." She turned to her driver. "We're leaving." "Aunt Prudence." The older woman paused 1 foot on the carriage step. "Thank you," Clara said, "for sending me here. It's the best thing you ever did for me." Prudence's expression flickered something that might have been regret or might have been anger, and then she climbed into the carriage without another word. Clara watched it roll away until it disappeared over the hill. Then she let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding her entire life, arms wrapped around her from behind, small arms, large arms, arms of all sizes as the children swarmed her. She heard Sarah crying, heard Thomas saying, "You stayed, you stayed, you stayed," like a prayer, heard the twins arguing about who got to hug her first, and then Sam's voice low and rough cutting through the chaos. "You chose us." Clara looked up at him over the heads of the children. "I chose myself," she said. "You were just the reason I finally learned how." Sam's eyes held hers for a long moment. Then he nodded, turned and walked back to the barn. But Clara saw his hand shake as he lifted the latch, saw him pause in the doorway and take a breath before disappearing inside. He was feeling something. Something he wasn't ready to name. That made 2 of them. The night after Prudence left, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by her window watching the moon rise over the mountains and tried to understand what she was feeling. Free. That was part of it. For the first time in 21 years, she had no one waiting to claim her, no obligation hanging over her head. She'd burned her last bridge, and the flames felt like liberation. But there was something else. Something that had sparked in her chest when Sam said, "You chose us." Something that grew every time he looked at her with those dark eyes that weren't quite so dead anymore. Dangerous thoughts for a hired woman in a widower's house. Clara pushed them away and tried to sleep. The next morning brought chaos. "He's burning up," Sarah said, her voice tight with fear. "He was fine last night. He was fine." Clara pressed her hand to Thomas's forehead and felt the heat radiating off him like a stove. The boy was pale. His lips cracked, his breathing shallow and rapid. "How long has he been like this?" "I don't know. He didn't want breakfast, and I thought he was just tired from yesterday. But then he wouldn't get out of bed, and when I touched him—" Sarah's voice broke. "Clara, what's wrong with him?" Clara was already moving, stripping the covers back, checking Thomas's body for signs of injury or illness. When she pressed on his stomach, he cried out a thin, terrible sound that made her blood run cold. "Where does it hurt, sweetheart?" "Everywhere." Thomas whimpered. "My belly. It hurts so bad." Clara pressed again, lower on the right side. Thomas screamed, "Get your father!" Sarah ran. Clara stayed with Thomas, wiping his face with a cool cloth, murmuring reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. She'd seen this before, had watched a cousin die from it in one of the houses she'd lived in. Appendicitis, the doctor had called it. Inflammation of the appendix. If it burst, she wouldn't think about that, couldn't. Sam burst through the door, his face white. "What happened?" "I think it's his appendix. We need a doctor. Now." "Town's 12 miles. Round trip." "Then you'd better ride fast." Sam knelt beside the bed, taking his son's hand. Thomas's eyes fluttered open. "Papa." "I'm here, son. I'm going to get the doctor. You hold on, hear me. You fight." "I'm scared." "I know. But Clara's going to stay with you. She's going to take care of you." Sam looked at Clara, and she saw the terror in his eyes, the same terror she'd seen during the storm. "She won't let anything happen to you." Clara's throat tightened. "Go. Every minute matters." Sam pressed a kiss to Thomas's forehead, then ran. Clara heard his boots pounding down the stairs, heard the front door slam, heard the thunder of hooves as he rode out. "Is he going to die?" Clara turned. Sarah stood in the doorway, the other children clustered behind her. 8 faces, all wearing the same expression of naked fear. "No," Clara said firmly. "He's not going to die, but I need everyone to help me. Sarah, I need cold water and clean cloths. Matthew, Mark, go to the cellar and bring ice if there's any left from winter. Ruth, keep the little ones calm. Can you do that?" They scattered to their tasks, grateful for something to do. Clara turned back to Thomas. His breathing was worse now, shallow and rapid. His skin had gone gray. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave me, Thomas Brooks. Not after everything." The hours that followed were the longest of Clara's life. She kept Thomas cool with wet cloths, gave him sips of water when he could swallow, talked to him constantly when he drifted toward unconsciousness. She told him about her grandmother, about the songs she used to sing, the stories she used to tell. She told him about the first time she saw the ocean, a memory she'd almost forgotten. She told him about the future they were going to have together, the adventures, the holidays, the years and years stretching out ahead. "You're going to grow up," she said, her voice cracking. "You're going to be tall like your father. You're going to bring me grandchildren someday, and I'm going to spoil them rotten. Do you hear me, Thomas? That's a promise." Thomas's hand twitched in hers. "You'll stay." "I'll stay. Even if I die." "You're not going to die." Clara gripped his hand tighter. "But yes, even then. I'm yours now, Thomas. This whole family is mine, and I don't abandon what's mine." The door opened. Sarah slipped in, her face streaked with tears. "How is he?" "The same. Worse, maybe." Clara didn't look away from Thomas. How are the others? Scared. Ruth's been praying. Matthew won't stop pacing. The little ones don't understand what's happening. Sarah moved closer. Clara, if he doesn't. He will. He has to. But if he doesn't, then we'll fall apart, Clara said bluntly. All of us. Your father most of all. He can't lose another child, Sarah. It would destroy him. What about you? Clara finally looked at her. It would destroy me too. Is that what you want to hear? I love that boy. I love all of you. And the thought of losing any of you. Her voice broke. Just help me keep him alive until the doctor gets here. That's all we can do. Sarah nodded and took up position on Thomas's other side. They waited together as the sun climbed higher, as the hours stretched into eternity, as Thomas's condition slowly terribly worsened. His fever spiked. His breathing turned ragged. He stopped responding to Clara's voice, drifting into a half-conscious state that terrified her more than anything else. Please, Clara whispered. Please don't take him. I'll give anything. Just don't take him. She wasn't sure who she was talking to. God, maybe. Or Beth. Or the universe itself. The sound of hooves made her heart leap. They're back. Matthew's voice echoed from downstairs. Papa's back with the doctor. Clara didn't move from Thomas's side. Couldn't. Her legs had gone numb from kneeling, but she wouldn't leave him. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Sam burst through the door first, followed by an older man with a weathered face and a black bag. This is Dr. Webb, Sam said, breathless. He rode from town in under 2 hours. The doctor moved to the bed, his hands already reaching for Thomas. How long has he been like this? Since this morning. Maybe 6 hours now. Dr. Webb pressed on Thomas's abdomen, his expression grim. When Thomas cried out weakly, the doctor nodded. Appendicitis. The inflammation is severe, but I don't think it's ruptured yet. What do we do? Sam's voice was raw. We wait. We keep him cool. Keep him hydrated and pray the inflammation goes down on its own. If it ruptures... Dr. Webb didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. There's nothing else. Surgery is possible, but not out here. Not without proper facilities. It would kill him faster than the disease. The doctor pulled supplies from his bag. I'll stay tonight. Monitor his condition. The next 12 hours will tell us whether he lives or dies. Clara heard Sarah sob behind her. Heard Sam make a sound like something breaking. But she kept her eyes on Thomas, kept her hand in his, kept her voice steady. He's going to live. He's too stubborn to die. Dr. Webb looked at her with something like respect. You've been with him all day. I'm not leaving. Good. He needs an anchor, something to hold on to. The doctor prepared an injection laudanum Clara guessed for the pain. Keep talking to him. Keep him connected to the world. Sometimes that's the difference between living and giving up. The night that followed was a waking nightmare. Clara didn't sleep, didn't eat, barely moved from Thomas's bedside. She talked until her voice gave out, then hummed, then just held his hand and willed him to fight. Sam stayed too positioned on Thomas's other side. He didn't speak much, couldn't maybe, but his presence was steady, solid. Twice their hands brushed over Thomas's still form. Neither of them pulled away. Somewhere around midnight, Thomas's fever broke. Clara felt it first, a change in the quality of his skin, a shift from dry heat to normal warmth. She pressed her hand to his forehead and felt tears streaming down her face. Doctor, his fever. Dr. Webb was there in seconds, checking Thomas's pulse, his breathing, his pupils. When he finally looked up, he was smiling. The inflammation is receding. He's going to make it. Clara heard Sam's breath catch, heard Sarah crying with relief, heard the murmur of the other children who'd refused to sleep clustered in the hallway. But she couldn't speak, could only hold Thomas's hand and let the tears fall. Clara. Thomas's voice was thread-thin, barely audible, but his eyes were open clear for the first time in hours. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. Did I die? No, baby. You didn't die. You fought just like I told you to. Thomas's lips curved in a weak smile. I wanted to stay. For you. Clara bent down and pressed a kiss to his forehead, not caring that Sam was watching, not caring about propriety or protocol or anything except the miracle of this boy still breathing. You did good, she whispered. You did so good. Dr. Webb stayed until morning, making sure Thomas was truly out of danger. By the time he left, color was returning to the boy's face, and he was demanding food. Weak demands, but demands nonetheless. He'll need rest, the doctor told Clara at the door. Weeks of it. And watch for any recurrence of symptoms. If this happens again, we may not be so lucky. Thank you. For coming so quickly, for saving him. Thank Mr. Brooks. He nearly killed that horse getting to town. Dr. Webb paused. You did well, miss. Keeping him stable, keeping him calm. A lot of women would have panicked. I don't have the luxury of panic. Too many people depending on me. The doctor nodded and climbed onto his horse. Clara watched him ride away, then went back inside to find Sam waiting in the kitchen. He looked terrible unshaven, exhausted his clothes, rumpled from the night spent in a chair. But his eyes were alive, in a way they hadn't been since she arrived. Coffee, she offered. Please. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, cups in hand, while the house slowly woke around them. Clara could hear the children upstairs moving quietly so as not to disturb Thomas. Could hear Elizabeth babbling in her crib, the twins whispering to each other, the normal sounds of mourning after a night of terror. You saved him. Sam's voice was rough. The doctor saved him. You kept him alive until the doctor got there. That's not nothing, Clara. He set down his cup and looked at her directly. That's everything. Clara's hands trembled around her own cup. I just did what needed doing. No, you did more than that. Sam stood, moved around the table, knelt beside her chair. You loved him, not because you had to, not because anyone was paying you. You loved him like he was yours. He is mine. The words came out before Clara could stop them. They all are. I know that sounds presumptuous. I know I'm just the hired help. But I can't help how I feel. You're not just the hired help. You haven't been for weeks now. Sam took her hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around hers. Clara, I need to tell you something. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. These past 2 months watching you with my children, seeing what you've done for this family, I've felt things I didn't think I could feel anymore. After Beth died, I thought that part of me was dead too, the part that could hope, that could want, that could love. Sam, let me finish. His grip on her hand tightened. When you ran into that storm for Thomas, when you stood up to your aunt, when you sat by his bed all night refusing to give up, I saw who you really are, not a hired woman, not a desperate girl with nowhere to go. A fighter, a protector, someone who would burn herself to ashes to keep the people she loves warm. Clara's eyes blurred with tears. I'm not asking for anything, Sam continued. I know this isn't what you signed up for. You came here looking for a position, not a husband. But I need you to know that if you wanted more, if you could ever see yourself wanting more. Yes. The word cut him off. Yes. Yes, I could see myself wanting more. Clara reached up and touched his face rough with stubble. I've been wanting more since the night after the storm. Maybe before that. I just didn't think I never dared. Sam kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was the kiss of a man who'd been drowning and had finally found air. Clara kissed him back with everything she had. All the loneliness of 21 years. All the hope she'd been afraid to feel, all the love she'd been storing up for someone who would never come. He'd come. He was here. and he was kissing her like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Is this real?" Clara whispered. "It's real. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and regret this. The only thing I'd regret is letting you go." Sam pulled back to look at her. "Marry me, Clara. Be my wife. Be their mother. Be mine." Clara's heart stopped, started again. "You're asking me now, after everything that just happened?" "I'm asking you now because everything that just happened showed me exactly how short life is. How quickly it can be taken away." His hands cupped her face. "I spent 18 months being dead inside. You brought me back to life. I'm not going to waste another day pretending I don't love you." "You love me. I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound. Clara thought about the girl she'd been 2 months ago, the unwanted orphan stepping off a train into nowhere. She thought about everything that had happened since. The storms, the tests, the slow building of trust. The children who'd become hers. The man who'd become her home. "Yes," she said. "I'll marry you." Sam let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside him for years. Then he was kissing her again, lifting her off the chair, spinning her around the kitchen, while she laughed against his mouth. "Papa." They froze, turned. Thomas stood in the doorway, pale and weak, but upright, his hand braced against the frame. "Thomas, you should be in bed." Clara started. "Are you kissing Miss Clara?" Sam cleared his throat. "I was." "Yes. Does that mean she's staying forever?" Clara crossed to Thomas and knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. "That's exactly what it means. I'm going to marry your father. I'm going to be your mother. Not to replace your mama, no one could ever do that, but to love you and take care of you and be here for every moment of your life." Her voice cracked. "If you'll have me." Thomas studied her face with that too-old expression children get when they've been forced to grow up too fast. Then he threw his arms around her neck. "Finally," he mumbled into her shoulder. "I've been waiting forever." Clara laughed through her tears and held him close. Behind them she heard the thunder of footsteps as the other children came running, drawn by voices and commotion. She heard Sarah's gasp of realization, the twins' excited questions, Ruth's quiet sob of joy. And she felt Sam's hand on her shoulder, solid and warm and real. She'd come here with nothing. No family, no home, no hope. Now she had everything. The news spread across the territory like wildfire. Within a week, neighbors Clara had never met were arriving at Shadow Creek with gifts and congratulations, their faces full of curiosity about the woman who'd tamed the Broken Brooks family. "They're talking about you in town," Mrs. Henderson told her during one visit. "The girl who ran into a storm for a child that wasn't hers. The girl who told her fancy aunt to go to blazes." Clara's cheeks burned. "That's not exactly what I said." "Close enough." Mrs. Henderson smiled. "Beth would be proud, you know. She always said Sam needed someone with fire in her belly, someone who wouldn't let him disappear into his grief." "I'm not replacing her." "No, dear, you're not. You're continuing what she started." The older woman squeezed Clara's hand. "That's different. That's better." The wedding was planned for the first Saturday in October, giving them just enough time to make arrangements without the delay feeling unbearable. Clara had imagined something small, just the family and perhaps a neighbor or two. She was wrong. 37 people have confirmed they're coming, Sarah announced one morning, consulting a list that seemed to grow longer every day. And Mrs. Chen from the general store sent word that she's making a cake, a real cake with sugar frosting. 37? Clara stared at her. "We don't even know 37 people." "Apparently we do now. Papa's been ranching here for 15 years. People remember." Clara looked at Sam, who was trying very hard to appear innocent while drinking his coffee. "Did you do this?" I may have mentioned we were getting married to a few people. A few... Word travels fast out here. Thomas tugged at Clara's sleeve. Does this mean we're having a party? It means we're having chaos, Clara muttered. But she was smiling. The preparations consumed every waking moment. Clara and Sarah worked on the wedding dress together, simple white cotton with lace at the collar, and cuffs the nicest thing Clara had ever owned. Mrs. Henderson brought ribbon for her hair. Ruth picked wildflowers every day, practicing for the arrangements she insisted on making herself. The twins threw themselves into preparation with terrifying enthusiasm, nearly burning down the smokehouse, while trying to help Jake cure extra meat for the feast. Esther appointed herself in charge of keeping the little ones out of trouble, a job she took very seriously and executed with moderate success. And through it all, Thomas stayed close to Clara. Since his illness, something had shifted in him. The angry boy was gone, replaced by someone softer, someone who sought out her hand when he was uncertain and her lap when he was tired. "You really are going to be my mother?" he asked one evening, watching her mend one of his shirts. "I really am." "And you'll never leave?" Clara set down her sewing and pulled him close. "Thomas, do you remember what I told you when you were sick?" He nodded. "I meant every word. You're mine now. This whole family is mine. And I don't abandon what's mine. Not ever." Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "Can I call you Mama?" Clara's heart cracked open. "If you want to." The others want to know too. Matthew and Mark were arguing about it. Sarah said she was too old, but Ruth said she wasn't sure, and Esther, Thomas. Clara lifted his chin so he was looking at her. "Anyone who wants to call me Mama can call me Mama. Anyone who doesn't have to. I'll love you all the same either way. Even Sarah. Even Sarah." Thomas grinned, a real grin, the first one she'd seen from him since Beth died, and ran off to share the news. The night before the wedding, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat by her window looking out at the land that would officially become hers tomorrow and tried to understand how she'd ended up here. A knock at her door made her turn. "Come in." Sarah slipped inside, still in her nightgown, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. At 13, she was beginning to look like the woman she would become, tall and strong with her father's eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. "I couldn't sleep either," Sarah said. "Can I sit with you?" Clara made room on the window seat. They sat together in silence for a long moment, watching the stars wheel overhead. "I've been thinking about Mama," Sarah said finally. "About what she would say if she could see this." "What do you think she'd say?" "I think she'd say it took you long enough to get here." Sarah's voice cracked on a laugh that was half sob. "She prayed for you, you know. Every night she prayed for whoever would come after her. She asked God to send someone brave and kind and strong enough to love us." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm not that brave." "You ran into a storm for Thomas." "That was desperation, not bravery. Maybe they're the same thing." Sarah leaned her head against Clara's shoulder. "I was so scared when you came. I thought you'd be like the others here for a few weeks, then gone. I thought if I didn't let myself care, it wouldn't hurt when you left." "I know." "But then you didn't leave. You stayed through the storm, through Aunt Prudence, through Thomas getting sick. You stayed even when it would have been easier to go." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. "Why?" Clara thought about the question. About all the years she'd spent being unwanted, being tolerated, being passed along like something nobody knew what to do with. "Because I finally found people worth staying for," she said. "And because I was tired of running from places that didn't want me. You wanted me, Sarah. You and your brothers and sisters, even when you didn't trust me. I could feel it. The wanting." She paused. "I'd never felt that before. I couldn't walk away from it." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat up and looked at Clara directly. "I'm not going to call you Mama." Clara's heart sank, even though she'd expected it. "But not because I don't want to," Sarah continued quickly. "Because I already have a Mama. I remember her. I don't want to forget." "I would never ask you to forget her." "I know. That's why I'm going to call you Mother instead." Sarah's eyes were bright with tears. "It's different. Special. Just for us." Clara couldn't speak, could only pull Sarah into her arms and hold on while they both cried. "Thank you," Clara finally managed, "for letting me in. I know how hard that was. Thank you for not giving up on us. I know we made it hard." They laughed together, wet and shaky, and something that had been holding its breath between them finally relaxed. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Clara woke to Elizabeth's babbling and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. She dressed slowly, carefully, savoring each moment of transformation. The white dress fit perfectly. Mrs. Henderson's ribbon made her hair look almost elegant. And when she caught sight of herself in the small mirror on her dresser, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Not the unwanted orphan. Not the desperate girl. Someone new. Someone who belonged. A knock at the door. Ruth's voice breathless with excitement. "Clara, everyone's waiting." "I'll be right down." One more look in the mirror. One more breath. Then Clara walked downstairs to marry the man she loved. The ceremony was held in the yard under a framework Jake had built, and the children had decorated with wildflowers and pine boughs. 37 people had shown up, just as Sarah predicted, neighbors and townspeople, and even a few strangers who'd heard the story and wanted to see its ending. Pastor Caldwell had ridden out from town, a young man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He smiled at Clara as she took her place beside Sam. "You ready for this?" Sam murmured, his hand finding hers. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it." The ceremony was simple. Pastor Caldwell spoke about love and commitment, about the covenant between husband and wife. He spoke about second chances and new beginnings, about families built by choice rather than blood. Then it was time for the vows. Sam went first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Clara Whitmore, I've spent 18 months believing I'd never feel anything again. That the part of me capable of hope died with my wife. But you proved me wrong. You came into my home with nothing but a worn bag and more courage than anyone I've ever met. You faced my children's hostility and my own distance. You ran into storms and stood up to family and sat by a sick boy's bed all night, refusing to let him go." His hands tightened on hers. "I promise to honor the strength you've shown, to cherish the love you've given so freely, to stand beside you through whatever comes. And I promise to never, ever take for granted the gift of your presence in our lives. You came here as a stranger, you became essential, and now you're my wife." Clara blinked back tears. Her turn. Sam Brooks. "I spent 21 years believing I was disposable, that I was a burden to be tolerated, a problem to be solved, a girl nobody would ever choose. And then you gave me a chance. Not because I was special, not because I deserved it, just because you needed help, and I was there." She looked at the children, all 9 of them arranged around the ceremony in their best clothes. Sarah with Elizabeth on her hip, Matthew and Mark standing at attention, Ruth clutching her flower basket, Esther holding the hands of James and John. Thomas in front of them all, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. But something happened that I didn't expect. I fell in love. Not just with you, but with them. With this harsh, beautiful land. With the life you'd built and nearly lost. I found a family when I'd given up believing I'd ever have one." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "I promise to honor Beth's memory by loving the children she brought into this world. I promise to be your partner in everything, the good days and the bad ones, the storms and the sunshine. I promise to fight for this family with everything I have." She paused. "I came here looking for a place to survive. I found a reason to live. You are my home, Sam Brooks. All of you are my home. and I'm never leaving." Pastor Caldwell smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Sam, you may kiss your bride." Sam pulled her close and kissed her, while 37 people cheered and 9 children mobbed them from all sides. Clara laughed against his lips, trying to kiss him back, while simultaneously being hugged by small arms and pelted with flower petals. "Mama!" Thomas shouted, climbing her like a tree. "You're really our mama now. I'm really your mama now. Forever. Forever." The celebration that followed was unlike anything Clara had experienced. Food appeared from everywhere: roasted beef and chicken, fresh bred vegetables from late gardens, pies and cookies, and the magnificent cake from Mrs. Chen. Music started when someone produced a fiddle. Dancing began awkward and joyful, everyone moving to rhythms that defied coordination but celebrated survival. Sam led Clara in the first dance, pulling her close despite the watching crowd. "Happy," he murmured. "Terrified." "Of what?" "That I'll wake up. That this is a dream. That someone will come and take it all away." Sam stopped moving, cupped her face in his hands. "Listen to me, Clara Brooks." The name sent a shiver through her. "No one is taking anything away. Not your family, not your home, not me. You fought for this. You earned it. And anyone who tries to take it will have to go through me first. And me." Thomas appeared at their elbows. "I'll fight too." "And me." Sarah with Elizabeth in her arms. "And us." The twins speaking in unison for once. "And me." Ruth, her small voice fierce. "Me too." Esther chimed in, James and John echoing her without understanding why. Clara looked at them, this family she'd stumbled into, this collection of grieving hearts that had somehow become hers, and felt something shift inside her. The last wall crumbled. The last defense fell. She was home. Truly, completely home. "I love you," she said. "To all of them. To the land and the sky and the future stretching out ahead. I love you so much it hurts." "That's how you know it's real," Sam said, pulling her back into his arms. "The hurt. It means you have something worth losing. I don't want to lose any of you, ever. Then don't. Stay. Fight. Love us anyway." He kissed her forehead. "That's all any of us can do." The party continued until well past dark. Clara danced with everyone: Sam, the children, neighbors whose names she was still learning. She ate too much and laughed too loud, and cried happy tears when Mrs. Henderson presented her with a quilt the women of the territory had made together, each square representing a family who wished them well. Finally, when the last guest had gone and the children had been herded to bed, Clara and Sam stood alone on the porch watching the stars come out. "No regrets?" Sam asked. "Not a single one." "It won't be easy. The ranch is still struggling. Winters are brutal. The isolation—" "Sam." Clara turned to face him. "I've been alone in crowded houses my whole life. I've been cold with a roof over my head. I've been hungry while sitting at tables full of food. Easy isn't what I want. What I want is real. What I want is this." He pulled her close and they stood together in the darkness, two broken people who'd found their way to something whole. The months that followed proved Clara right. Nothing about life at Shadow Creek was easy. Winter came hard and early, burying them in snow for weeks at a time. The isolation pressed in like a weight. Money was tight, resources were tighter, and some days Clara wondered if they'd make it through. But they had each other, and that, it turned out, was enough. Spring brought new calves and cautious hope. Summer brought growth in the garden. Clara and Sarah had resurrected in the children, who seemed to get taller every day, in the love that deepened between Clara and Sam, until she couldn't remember what life had been like before him. And then one morning in early autumn, Clara woke up sick. "It's probably nothing," she told Sam, trying to wave away his concern. "Something I ate." But the sickness continued, day after day, always in the morning. It was Sarah who figured it out first. "Clara!" The girl's voice was strange, caught between excitement and fear. When was your last monthly? Clara stopped washing dishes, counted backward, and felt the world tilt on its axis. Oh. Oh. I think I'm... She couldn't say it. Couldn't make it real by speaking the words. Sarah's face split into a grin. You're going to have a baby. Papa. Papa Clara's going to have a baby. The house exploded into chaos. Children came running from every direction shouting questions. Sam appeared from the barn, his face white, then red, then something like wonder. A baby. He crossed to Clara, took her hands, searched her face. Our baby. Our baby. He kissed her, picked her up and spun her around, set her down carefully, suddenly terrified. Should you be standing? Should you sit down? Do you need water? Food? I'll get the doctor. Sam. Clara laughed, tears streaming down her face. I'm pregnant, not dying. But Beth... He stopped. The fear in his eyes was raw, terrible. Clara took his face in her hands. I am not Beth, and whatever happens, you're not going through it alone. Not this time. He held her like she was something precious, something that might break. I can't lose you, he whispered. I can't. You won't. I'm too stubborn to die. Remember. He laughed a wet, shaky sound and buried his face in her hair. The children crowded around them, 9 excited voices asking 100 questions. Was it a boy or a girl? When would it come? Could they help name it? Would it have Clara's eyes or Papa's? We won't know anything for months yet, Clara said. But yes, you can all help name it, and yes, it will be part of this family, just like all of you. Another baby. Thomas's voice was wondering. That'll make 10 kids. Think you can handle that many siblings? Thomas grinned. I think we can handle anything. We're the Brooks family. We survive. 9 months later, Clara proved him right. The labor was long harder than she'd expected, but Dr. Webb was there, and Sam never left her side, and when it was finally over, she held her daughter in her arms and wept with joy. She's perfect. Sam breathed, his finger tracing the tiny face. Clara. She's perfect. She needs a name. They'd discussed options for months, debating and discarding, unable to agree. But now, looking at this new life they'd created together, Clara knew exactly what to call her. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. Sam's eyes filled with tears. Hope Brooks. Because that's what she is. What all of this is. Everything I never dared to believe I could have. The door opened and 9 children poured in quietly, for once awed by the miracle in Clara's arms. Is that her? Thomas whispered. Is that our sister? This is Hope, your baby sister. One by one they came close, Sarah with tears in her eyes. The twins unusually reverent. Ruth reaching out one gentle finger to touch Hope's cheek. Esther holding James and John up to see. Thomas climbing onto the bed to sit beside Clara, his face full of wonder. And Elizabeth, now almost 3, pointing at the baby and declaring, mine. Yes, Clara said, gathering as many of them as she could reach. She's yours, she's all of ours, and we're all hers. Sam sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Clara's shoulders, his eyes moving from child to child to child. This is everything, he said softly. This is everything I thought I'd lost. Clara leaned into him, their daughter in her arms, their children surrounding them. No, she said. This is everything you found again, everything we built, together. She looked around at the faces of her family, biological and chosen, old and new, broken and healed. She thought about the girl who'd stepped off a train 2 years ago with nothing but a worn carpet bag and a desperate need to belong. That girl was gone. In her place was Clara Brooks, wife, mother, fighter, survivor, home. She had arrived at Shadow Creek expecting nothing and found everything. She had been given 9 grieving children and a broken man and a ranch that was falling apart, and she had loved them anyway. Loved them through storms and sickness and the ghosts of the past. Loved them until the love became real, became permanent, became the foundation of something that would last. Thomas was right. They were the Brooks family, and they could survive anything. Because Clara had learned the truth that her grandmother tried to teach her all those years ago, the truth she'd been too hurt to hear until now. Home isn't a place you find. It's a place you build, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. She had built hers here in the harsh beauty of Montana territory, with a man who'd taught her that second chances exist, and children who'd taught her that love doesn't require blood. And she would protect it with everything she had. Forever. The unwanted girl had finally found where she belonged, and she was never letting go.